The thing that I had to do was connect them to more than just a job and the paycheck, but the opportunity to make a difference.
That is Dr. LaTonya Goffney, Superintendent of Aldine ISD in Houston, Texas, and one of the most respected voices in public education today. She believes that real transformation begins when people are connected to purpose, not positions.
You can set a baseline. Where are we today? This is where we are. Because you can't lead with what you think, and you can't lead with how you feel. Where are we?
By naming where the system truly is, she creates alignment, trust, and a foundation people can rally around at scale.
We needed some proof points. We've got to demonstrate what's possible, again, for Black, brown, and students of poverty. So people were able to see that our kids can do that.
Her leadership shows how visible proof turns belief into momentum and how demonstrating success changes what entire communities think is possible. By the end of this conversation, you'll learn how to communicate a clear vision, unify stakeholders across a large system, and turn purpose into sustained action that drives results. I'm Dr. Matthew Flippen, and this is Transformational Educators. This idea about communicating a unifying vision, leading with purpose, and inspiring others to believe what they can accomplish. I know that links back to your own personal story. And I'd love for you to just touch on that just for a second about what difference that made for you as a young teenager.
You know, education changed the whole trajectory of my life. I was born into poverty. My mom was 15 years old when she gave birth to me, and I never knew my father. I ended up being saved from a life of lots of abuse, every kind of abuse that you can imagine. In fifth grade, I moved in with my grandmother. And my grandmother, I call her Big Mama. She worked as a housekeeper for a local white family. And my grandpa, he mowed lawns and collected cans and did dumpster diving. When I moved in with my grandparents, though, it truly changed my life because when I went to school, I got to focus on school. And I was very blessed with the best teachers. And I was raised in the country, Cold Spring, Texas, population of 697. And while I may have been poor, I had access to the best teachers. And they saw something in me that I didn't even recognize because in my family, there's lots of poverty. There weren't a lot of hopes, dreams, and aspirations for anything different. My grandmother had a fifth grade education. My grandpa had a third grade education. And my grandpa would say, Tanya, if you can read, you can go anywhere. And that stuck with me. So when I went to school, I put my past behind me and all of the challenges and even my present behind me as far as having limitations as far as poverty. And I dove into school like my life depended on it because my grandpa said, if you can read, you can go anywhere. As I stated earlier, it was teachers that truly saw something in me and changed the whole trajectory of my life. And that is a gift that I don't take for granted. I'm truly thankful to God for giving me great teachers and giving me opportunity to be able to live the life, which again, my parents and my grandparents didn't know how to put it into words, hopes, dreams, and aspirations. But I recognize I am living my ancestors' dreams, and it was education that made it possible.
So beautiful. Such a beautiful story. And I can only imagine as the children in the district you serve now and in others that you've been in that have similar backgrounds and hardships they're facing, you are an example of when you put your energy in the right place in education and you've got mentors and educators around you supporting you and cheering for you. Your past doesn't define you.
That's absolutely true.
And I think that statement is not only true about individual children, but it's also true about school systems and communities as well. So let's fast forward to your first principalship. Tell us a little bit about what were the expectations like when you arrived? And then what was the vision that you cast to move that?
I look back at my hometown, I get emotional because it was sweet in so many ways. Everybody got along. We were helpers one to another, and it was just a sweet, sweet community. And so I remember, again, being a first-generation college student, I was getting to live my dream to be a teacher, a professional. And so that was really exciting for me. And then to get the opportunity to be a principal, I never even imagined it. It wasn't on my vision board. But when I got the opportunity, what I realized is, to whom much is given, much is required. It's something my grandmother would always emphasize. And so I recognized that the expectations were much bigger than the classroom in which I'd had positive impact and was grateful for that success. And I remember interviewing with the superintendent, assuring him that I was going to work hard. didn't know what that work was going to look like because, you are truly walking by faith. And so long story short, and I'll be honest and transparent, I'd only taught for 3 years. I'd only been an AP for 2 years. And I just had opportunity because I was in a small town and had a huge opportunity. And so long story short, when I went into the intermediate campus, I'll never forget, there was no book that really told you what to do. When you start teaching, you had Fred Jones Tools for Teaching. You have Harry Wong's, but there's no book for your first principalship. And, we have Todd Whitaker and others that have done some amazing work in your work as well. But back then, there wasn't a book. But I knew that with the accountability of the campus, it was rated unacceptable. It had been rated unacceptable for a couple of years. It had lost 22 staff members out of 34. It was a campus that was full of possibility, but lacked the hope and the belief that things could be any different because of the historical underperformance. And so long story short, like I said, I didn't have a book to read, but the one thing I've always been blessed with is to know the power of people and what you began with. My grandmother would say that where there's unity, there is strength. And so I had to unify the people who were remaining around the fact that things could be better and that we could provide a better learning experience for our students. And so I just remember meeting with the team leaders at the time, and they talked about how the morale was low. They talked about how discipline was up. They talked about all these different things that were challenges back then. And I remember how we talked about how we were going to change it, so casting a vision of what's possible. And again, I use a lot of quotes from my grandmother, and they'll probably resonate with you. But, without a vision, the people perish. We have to have a vision and a collective vision that we can work towards. And I also remember, because I know I'm not on this for this, but I established it at the beginning, we were trying to come up with some common language, a common framework for how we're going to engage and work with people. And I was so excited that my first principalship was also during the time when our district adopted Capturing Kids' Hearts. The irony of that. Flippen, your father. And so long story short, we had our social contracts on the wall. We had all of these different things. We'd all gone through the training, and it was training to truly change how I saw myself as a leader and how we engage people and provide different tools and resources for addressing behavior that may be off, spending the summer, spending the time getting people trained up, building trust, casting a vision for our parents, for our teachers, and it's day one. And so it's showtime. It's showtime. And I'll never forget, we had every wall scrubbed, had removed dirty carpet, had the teacher's lounge shining. Like when the kids walked in, we make sure it felt different from anything that they had experienced for the last couple of years. So the teachers felt it, the students felt it, and then we were able to work towards manifesting that vision of a better educational experience for the kids we serve.
Outstanding. So fast forward, I know you were there 2-3 years. Is that right?
Yes, literally. We were improving academic outcomes, but more important, improving the belief that our kids could do the work and could perform the way we wanted them to perform.
And so you saw the results of that in a relatively short period of time.
Yes, sir, we did.
So now let's talk about how that applies to Aldine, right? I can't remember the exact what Aldine was going through when you arrived as superintendent, but were there some parallels between those two experiences?
The thing that I say all the time is that leadership matters. I share with my mentees and others that your leadership as a campus principal, like leadership is a transferable skill. There were absolutely some of the same things. I remember in 2018 when I arrived in Aldine, going through the interview process and looked at the data. And of course, there were some challenges when we look at the community that I get to serve, that's nearly 100% Black, Brown, and students of poverty. 100% Title I schools were located in the north side of Houston, inner city. And so there are lots of challenges. And when I was coming in, we saw the data, the literacy data, and all of the academic data, but also going through some financial challenges. So in addition to academic challenges, there was a deficit budget and had released like 300 employees, and we opening 6 campuses. So lots of challenges. And so because of the announcement about leaders leaving, there was low morale, there was fractured trust, and you could just tell that this district that used to be a shining example of what was possible for Black, brown, and students of poverty had gone awry.
Hey, educators. I hope you're enjoying this conversation. At Graceland University, we believe real change in education starts with compassionate leadership and practical support. That's why we share stories like this. If something in today's episode spoke to you, maybe about your purpose, your next step, or how you can make a bigger impact, I invite you to explore how Graceland walks alongside educators through degree programs and strategic partnerships. Scan the QR code on screen or follow the link in the show notes to learn more. Now let's get back to the episode. That sounds like you're experiencing Cold Spring, but amped up maybe 100-fold.
Oh, amped up 100-fold. My campus in Cold Spring was 401 students and came here. There was 67,000 students. And so it was a huge aha. But again, leadership is a transferable skill.
Low performance can become part of your identity. You don't even realize that you've set low expectations for yourself or those around you because it's just the way it is. So I can imagine as you're facing those challenges when you first arrive in Aldine and you're thinking, wow, we've got to raise expectations, but we've got a lot of things that we've got to address. Walk me through kind of how you gathered stakeholders to capture this vision that I know you had. You walked in there with a vision. How'd you get everyone else on board?
Oh, gosh, it did not happen in one meeting. But the one thing I know for sure is you have to lead with hope. And I've heard colleagues, and it's probably been written as a popular quote, that hope is not a strategy. But what I can tell you is someone who lived without hope and growing up in poverty, the opposite of hope is despair. When you have despair, you have low expectations. You don't even know what's even possible. And you don't even know that you're living in this deficit kind of mindset. Long story short, it became about, we had to connect our employees. When you think about the district where I serve now, 100% Title I, as I stated, our employees, our teachers, they were working really hard. And most of them, like nearly 100% of our employees, especially our teachers, drive into Aldine. So they go to their personal children go to school in the suburbs. And then our auxiliary employees, about 50% of them live, but the majority of our 9,000 employees don't live in the Aldine area. The thing that I had to do was connect them to more than just a job and the paycheck, but the opportunity to make a difference. So literally, I asked them about their hopes and dreams and aspirations for their own children. So what are your hopes, dreams, and aspirations for your own children? Because their children don't go to school in Aldine for the most part. And so when they thought about what they wanted for their own children, and then I connected that to what the 67,000 Black, brown, and students of poverty in our district deserve. Don't they deserve exactly what you want for your own children? So if you wouldn't accept this for your own children, we're not going to accept it for the children that we're getting paid to serve. And so we have to have a belief, not in lip service, that all kids can learn. We got to believe that they can absolutely learn and that we have the power, that we have the ability to ensure that they're learning. And so that took a huge push and a mind shift with principals who had to understand and know their data. When I went into Cold Spring Intermediate, my first principalship, I had to set a baseline. And that's the same thing I did here in Aldine and every campus that I've served in between or district I've served. You can set a baseline. Where are we today? This is where we are. Because you can't lead with what you think, what you may have heard, and you can't lead with how you feel. Where are we? And then you got to think about where should we be, or what would you want us to be if it were your kids? And then how do we get there?
Those kinds of plans always face resistance. So going back to Cold Spring Intermediate, where did the biggest source of resistance come from, and how did you win that over?
I believe initially the biggest resistance came from teachers who thought that it was too hard or too much, or our kids couldn't do it. And just totally impacted by their belief that our kids just can't do this. I remember having a conversation with a teacher and she was like, these kids. And that wasn't a conversation that went well. And Cold Spring, the demographics were totally different. But because we were in rural Cold Spring, Texas, as I stated earlier, population of 697, these aren't big city kids. I mean, everybody has their own context, but there was a limitation based off the fact that these were just good country kids and they can't do this. I remember we switched math programs, and it was a pretty rigorous math program, and this is too hard. That was a tough one, but I'm telling you the challenge, and you have your own kids as well. The one way that I've always been able to get people to think differently or see differently is to share, well, what would you want for your own child? And typically that gets them to thinking, well, I would want my own child to have access to this rigorous instruction so it's going to prepare them to have success in life, to push them. So we are able to kind of get through some of that by just asking, what would you want for your own child? And how can we make sure that this child gets the education that they deserve? We've got to push. And I know there's some deficits, but we got to push and support. We got to have those high expectations and support.
That's so true. One of the quotes my father said to me probably daily the whole time I was growing up, which is, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And, that's such an important message because we do get to choose. And of course, there's lots of research that talks about self-fulfilling prophecy and expectations and all of that. So apply that to them when you go from Cold Springs Intermediate to Aldine. I would imagine there was that also
same. It was absolutely the same. And so
these kids, that hurts me so much when somebody says these kids. I'm like, first of all, they're our kids.
Listen, and one thing straight day one with the leadership team and teachers and everyone, we talk about what we believe in Aldine. I did it when I became superintendent in Cold Spring. I became superintendent in Lufkin before getting to Aldine. And so between everything that I learned as a first year principal in Cold Spring to superintendent in Aldine, there's probably about 15 years. Some things never change. And I think that you have to have some proof points for belief. And so when you're surrounded by mediocrity or surrounded where nobody is doing it, and the ones who are doing it at the choice schools, that's because those kids can do it, but these kids can't. And so we needed some proof points. And so while I'm casting the vision with the whole staff in Aldine, so new superintendent, so I'm casting the vision, and you have to lead a little differently when you have a complex system. I needed more proof points. At that point, we didn't have a single A-rated elementary school, and most of our A and B schools were all the choice schools that people choice into. So if you can choice in, that means you would probably have some parents with high expectations, or you're a go-getter anyway, and then you have permission to do innovation.
I would call that evidence.
That's right.
And that's not what I want. I need evidence to say we're going to raise expectations.
Right, exactly. And so I told the team, my internal team, we've got to demonstrate what's possible. Again, for Black, Brown, and students of poverty, we need some proof points quick. We did turnaround at campuses, and guess what the pillar that we had in our turnaround plan, and I believe in it, is an exceptional principal. It's got to be an exceptional principal. I'll never forget, I was interviewing for a superintendent here in Aldine, and I actually said it too when I interviewed in Lufkin. So if board members are listening, they'll remember as part of my response, I asked, would you rather have one amazing principal and a high-performing principal and 30 ineffective teachers, or would you rather have one ineffective principal and 30 high-performing teachers? And we started some conversations around that. And it's my belief, and again, your audience may not believe, you may not even support what I'm about to say, but I would rather have one impactful, high-performing principal and 30 mediocre teachers. Because what I know for sure is that one high-impact, high-performing principal is going to raise the level of their teaching. But if you have an ineffective principal, your high-performing teachers could potentially, their motivation could be diminished.
When they do the exit surveys about why people are leaving education, then they talk about culture as their number one. Well, who sets culture? The campus leader. So we really should say campus leadership is the number one reason that teachers leave. And so I 100% support one effective leader. First of all, if he's effective, those teachers aren't going to stay mediocre for long.
They're not. Listen, they're going to be excited 100%. And they're going to be inspired, and they're going to, and we have a leadership definition in Aldine that we said, we launched our strategic plan, and we went and also launched a leadership definition and talked about, and every single leader, we want to make sure that we're connecting, and we want to make sure that we're inspiring. And of course, we want to have impact. And so part of that connecting is building those relationships. You got to be visible. And literally, you got to do the hard work. If you're not a people person, you got to love people, because education is a people business. If you want people to do more, they're willing to do more for people who appreciate them, who they have a relationship with, who they feel a deep connection with. And so those are the kind of principles that we look for our transformation.
So true. I mean, I don't even like calling administration. I think that is totally sets the wrong expectation because we're leading people. So you were looking for some proof points. You needed some early, and you found the leader.
We found the leaders, and so we took 2 campuses, and they came what was called ACE demonstration schools, and we call it demonstrating what's possible. And within a year, they were out. These were the lowest performing schools in the district, the lowest elementary, not just in the district, they were some of the lowest performing in the state of Texas. And so we launched what's called Accelerated Campus Excellence. And one of the pillars is campus leadership. And of course, we get high performing teachers as well. And we extended the school day and did some other things. And so those campuses, A and B campuses. So people were able to see that our kids can do that. They can see what's possible.
And you did that without firing all the children.
Without firing. No, didn't change the children. I had a superintendent, he said this, it's the truth. Sometimes, people think that our parents are sending us, they're just they're sending us the very best that they have. That's the children. So we couldn't fire the children, couldn't fire the teachers, but we were able to be strategic about the principal and the teachers who were on the campus.
Well, I've had the opportunity to visit with probably 10 or 15 of your campus principals just on the last couple of years. And first of all, they love you. But I've also noticed that they have a similar profile in that they really deeply care about people and they have high expectations. There's also a little bit, I would say, of a freedom to innovate, that they know where the guardrails are and they're enthusiastic about what's possible. I know that comes straight from you. You've got so much confidence, it's spilling over, filling up their cup.
No, you know what? I think it's just sharing the fact that we can't have any excuses about what's possible. We can't, to your point earlier, we can't blame the kids. For so many schools, districts, maybe even policymakers, we blame the kids. Or we blame the demographics, or we have some kids who are born into, they're not anywhere in the ballpark, nowhere near third base, second base, first base. And, I was one of those kids as well. So I say this with absolute understanding of some of the challenges some of our kids come to school with. However, how they come to us is no excuse for how they leave us. And so we've got to have the belief in the fact that every kid deserves a great education. And that great education includes pushing them to achieve at high levels. And so that's one thing that we talk about. And you alluded to the fact that we can't have excuses for the kids that we serve. If you're going to teach in Aldine, if you're going to lead in Aldine, then you have to have that type of mentality and that belief in what's possible with a great education.
Yes. I know for you that also extends to children with special challenges. I think I've even seen a video of you dancing on stage at the graduation. With a young man.
Yes, that was hard because my firstborn son was born with chromosome deletion 1p36. And so in every district that I served in, he was perhaps the lowest performing kid in the district for sure. When I was in Cold Spring and we had 1,700 kids, he was the lowest performing, severe and profound special needs, couldn't sit up, couldn't use the restroom, couldn't do anything, nonverbal, all the things. He was profoundly disabled. When I went to Lufkin, 8,600 kids, same thing. He was perhaps the lowest performing kid. And even when we came to Aldine, I thought we would see more kids who looked like him. And there were only a few, but he was still perhaps one of the lowest performing kids. But what I love about education and love about leaders, whether it was my special needs child or my GT child, they both got great educations. And so I ended up losing my son in 2019. He died from some respiratory complications. The best part of remembering him was remembering the fact that he had great educators his entire career. And that even though I was serving in this very visible role as superintendent, I was able to see firsthand the quality of education for some of our most neediest children that we serve in public education. So I have a great deal of respect and admiration for special educators all across our state and country. And what you saw My son didn't get to graduate because, again, he was scheduled to graduate in 2019. He could speak and my child was nonverbal. And so Jordan, he was an honorary superintendent ambassador. Anytime I visit Eisenhower High School, he would greet me. And he had, like I said, he was a little bit more verbal. And he wanted to come take a picture at the end of graduation. And his mom asked if he could come out on stage. So I brought him back on stage again. And they just started playing the Dirty Dancing. I've had the time of my life, and I've never felt this way before. I can't remember the name of the song, but long story short, I'm in tears. And we're dancing, and he was dancing, and I'm remembering my son, but he doesn't know it. But my point, and thank you for allowing me a moment to kind of capture this that I've never talked about, but that's the beauty of public school. That's the beauty of what's possible when you have great leaders who hire great teachers, is that you can take a child with most needs who are profoundly disabled, all the way up to the most gifted children that we have. Some of our kids with autism, some of our kids who are just amazingly gifted. And as educators, we get an opportunity to make sure they get the best education they deserve so they can graduate and just have choices and opportunities in life.
Yes, so true. It is one of these beautiful gifts that education, the teachers and schools have to serve families that a lot of times are struggling because of challenges their children face. And challenges your children face can be a huge spectrum. But, there is this idea that my child is known and loved and encouraged to be the best version of themselves, that allows someone to feel valued and supported and encouraged. When we're together on a journey, it doesn't seem as hard. But we've had a great time talking about vision. And this concept of casting a vision, having high expectations, having a strategic plan to find those points to celebrate and proof points, I think is what you call them, really is a great example. And I think not only can we do that at the district level, but at the campus level, and just continue to say, hey, no excuses. Let's work on this together. Our all children, what you want for your own children, you should want for all children. Sir, those are just incredible. I'd love for people to continue to follow you. I know you have now been named the president of the American Association of School Administrators, and the fact that I got an hour with you today.
So I'm president-elect now. I'll be president in July. So I have about 6 more months as president-elect. And so,
okay. You got 6 months to warm up. Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, and I love that because your example of leadership is one that I hope people really do follow along. I mean, it's such a gift to be an administrator in your campus because they get to see you up close and personal. I know it takes a lot of energy for you to go outside the district and speak and all the things you're involved with, but I just will continue to pray that God gives you the strength to continue to persevere. I know it's not all great, and I'm sure you've still got some adversaries, trying to criticize the wonderful work that you and your team are doing. So if our listeners want to follow along with you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, I love X. So I'm on X, Dr. Goffney. And so that's perhaps the best way. I'm on the other social media outlets, but X and LinkedIn. I'm doing a little bit more of LinkedIn, trying to migrate over from X to LinkedIn because there's a lot more opportunities to engage in thought leadership. X used to have a lot more with, that's how it started. I love following my, your dad and other great thought leaders. And then they changed the algorithm. And so that's not what I see. And so I'm migrating to LinkedIn. So that's the long version of I'm on X, LinkedIn, and I love learning from those who are doing the work and just excited about leadership in this moment for such a time as this.
That's true. And I know at some point, I hope that you will write more than one book about your journey, because I know it would be an encouragement as well. So if you found today's episode valuable, which I sure did, please share it with a colleague who would benefit. Follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And until next time, keep leading with purpose and transforming schools into places where everyone thrives. If today's conversation gave you fresh insight or inspired you to lead with purpose, please follow the show and tell a friend. It helps us reach more educators who want to make a difference. For more stories, resources, and tools to support your leadership journey, visit graceland.edu. Until next time, keep leading with courage and care.